Okay, this is day 266, part 1. So, gonna talk about the Bloomingdale neighborhood here in a minute. I talked a little bit about it yesterday, transitions and so forth, and talked about the way that you only get to know a neighborhood, and sometimes when you have other people injecting themselves, wanting to make money in a neighborhood, you have these rat lines. Good thing about this neighborhood in Bloomingdale is it's transitioning, and we're getting away from taking advantage of the people at the lowest rungs of our society and getting into more of a commerce. So that's good. So, my background there. But I don't think you can report on that and you can know about that unless you actually live with people and spend time with them. And that's what I've done here the last week in this neighborhood where Seth Rich lived. Now, Katsyv. Katsyv. Everybody wants to know Katsyv, Katsyv, Katsyv. Well, you could think of K-A-T-S-Y-V. You could think of it like you had a sieve and you were pouring cats into it and you were picking out the ones that you wanted versus the ones that you didn't. That's kind of a mean Katsyv, but that is what it is. That is what it's going to turn out to be. Mr. Katsyv is the real story here, not Veselnitskaya. Veselnitskaya is the attorney that tried to get her nosed her way into the meeting with Donald Trump Jr. Like all these stories, it's always a front or a protection or a resistance or a flurry to cover something much, much, much more sinister. And once again, we find that's true. Now, a lot of people said, oh, George, you worked on this in Czechoslovakia in '89 and you worked on it again in 2002. You have all this background. Yeah, you know, and 6 months ago, you reported on all this. Yeah, but I didn't have the organization that was doing the child trafficking, and I didn't have the CEO. Now I have Katsyv, and I have the NGO. So, this is a new story. This isn't an old story that was reported 6 months ago with Katsyv. You can think of Katsyv as, let's say the kittens, little kittens that Mr. Katsyv was sieving were little girls. And let's say that during the Bush administration, this little operation was in Czechoslovakia, but then let's say it moved in 1993 during the Bosnia conflict to Ukraine. So the marketplace is Ukraine. That's when all this was set up. Alperovich was the cover. Remember, what happened with Mark Rich and the Clintons is they were basically selling Russia by the pound, which is fine. We won. We get the spoils of war. We get to sell everything off. So we did that with the minerals. We did that with the oil pipelines. We're still having those fights now with Gazprom, with the gas pipelines, and Mr. Biden's son, Mr. Hunter Biden, and Burisma. We're still having these fights over that. But that's all well and good. That's just good politics. It's the child trafficking that came out of the '93 Bosnia conflict. That's where the wolf got the taste of blood. That's where the wolf got the taste of blood. And then it became inculcated within the rat lines. This is what I talk about when I say old Mossad versus new Mossad. Old Mossad, it was mainly the baby stealing and so forth, was mainly to populate Israel because we were completely surrounded on 7 sides, 7 opponents. That's not the situation anymore. The security is there now. It's not needed. But what happened was the rat lines stayed. Soviet Union went away. The money was so good, the rat lines stayed. So people like Mr. Katsyv, K-A-T-S-Y-V, who's kind of running around with Veselnitskaya, had a $203 million tax liability. Why? Because the FBI likes these crooks who are running these rat lines to go do their thing. Go do your thing. Make $203 million on child trafficking. And then we'll come in at the end and say, oops, you got a lawsuit and you're gonna go to jail for 20 years. Then what do? Well, you can either pay a $6 million fine and $6 million bribe, or you can basically go to jail. How many times does McCabe and McComey work that angle of, whoops, you did it again? How many times? Lots. So the reason why I was at 1050 Connecticut was Mr. Katsyv, or Katsyv, started a company. And it's going to be HR GAF. Remember Henry Fonda, GAF? It's going to be Human Rights Global Accountability Fund. Anytime you hear somebody say accountability associated with the Clinton Foundation, you think Ratline. It is almost a neon sign anytime anybody close to the Clinton Foundation says accountability. Go for it. Move toward it. It's like shots in this neighborhood. Go toward that. You go toward those shots because there's going to be a story. It's almost like you're trying to help us. So, Katsyv starts this Human Rights Global Accountability Fund, right? And he is going to be at 1050 Connecticut Avenue, just down the street from the Russian ambassadors. And you know how this is working? This is going to work? Marsh & McClanahan, or a big law firm like that, Washington, D.C. law firm, is going to call an intermediary lawyer, what I call a Ratline lawyer. They're going to bring them down. They're going to go up to Morton's, like where we met Dr. Corsi. They have this big smoking bar there with you smoke the cigars outside. Now it was a place for the old press, where when press used to actually cross-reference their stories and meet their sources. But this one's a little different. This one is going to be you're going to be meeting your Ratline lawyer. And you're going to set up something like the Human Rights Global Accountability Foundation. And what it is going to be sieving the girls coming out of the former Soviet states. That's exactly what it is. And the $203 million in that tax fraud scheme, there's going to be some oil and gas in there, but you're going to have a lot of human trafficking involved in it. And that's what's really sad about this. And I hate human trafficking stories. I never wanted to work these, but that's what actually happened, and that's what's going to be the big story out of this, Mr. Katsyv. Now everybody's wondering about this Jake Yates Sexton, this New York Times reporter that's driving this vessel Nitskaya all over the place for a year to all these different Trump rallies, seeing if she can knock off or pick off somebody in the Trump campaign with using her feminine wiles. Well, that's okay. That's the old Natasha program that Putin used to do, which is fine. And Comey now is trying to run, he's aping Putin now, which is fine. But Mr. Yates, don't come off hoity-toity like some elite from the New York Times. I would call you a Cadillac pimp, I just don't know what kind of car you drive. You are running the same kind of operation that your boss ran, your majority shareholder, sorry, that Slim ran in Central America and South America. You're trafficking. You're just as big a part of the trafficking as Carlos Slim. You're no different. You're no different. The difference between people in this neighborhood that have been lured into loan sharking schemes, that then have had to go into their daughters going into prostitution, their sons selling drugs, the difference is they have been forced into this by people like you. You, on the other hand, are a BMW pimp. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's just the truth. And I am tired of hearing from elites like you who don't even come to the neighborhoods that you report on, don't even follow up on these murder stories that you concoct, trying to lecture the people actually down here, actually getting the sources, getting the information, meeting with the people. So that's my little shout out to the New York Times, because you blew the story on me, you didn't get any of it right. And I'm just calling you out for what you are. And I'm gonna say, I don't know what kind of car you drive, so I can't call you any names. But it's Katsyv is gonna be the big story. Global Rights, or Human Rights Global Accountability Foundation, 1050. Oh, by the way, on your way out of that meeting at Morton's, you know, when you're meeting with your Ratline lawyer, make sure you get some nice undies for your date that we've arranged for you at Victoria's Secret. And oh, by the way, Mr. Sexton, you know, I get it, ton of sex. You know, you had this torrid affair with Veselskaya. Guess what? If you hadn't been an operative for Carlos Slim, never mind.